The late October nor'easter slammed into Harmony Creek like a runaway 18-wheeler that evening. Rain came down in sheets so thick, you could barely see 3 feet ahead. Thunder boomed across the hills like a howitzer, and lightning split the sky every few seconds, turning the world into a flickering nightmare of shadows and blinding white light. The wind howled through the trees, bending them almost to the ground, ripping branches free and hurling them across the empty roads. The temperature had plummeted 20 degrees in less than an hour, and anyone with any sense was locked inside, waiting for the worst of it to pass. But not everyone had that luxury. Betty Lou Peterson sat in her small cottage at the edge of town, listening to the storm rage outside. She was 78 years old, with silver hair she kept in a tight bun, and hands that still remembered how to quilt. Even though her eyes had stopped working properly 15 years ago, glaucoma had stolen most of her vision by 63, and by 65. The world had gone completely dark, but Betty Lou had never been the type to feel sorry for herself. She had raised 4 kids in this house. She had buried her husband here. She knew every inch of these rooms by heart, every creak in the floorboards, every draft from the windows. She did not need eyes to navigate her own home. What she did need, though, was help with things beyond these walls. And that was getting harder to come by. Her children had moved away, scattered across the country like dandelion seeds in the wind. They called when they could. They sent a little something when they remembered. But Betty Lou was alone most days, relying on neighbors and the occasional visit from the ladies' auxiliary to get by. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for what is right, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. And tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Because stories like this remind us that humanity still exists in every corner of the world, even in the darkest storms. It was around 9 o'clock when Betty Lou heard it, a sound that did not belong to the storm, something mechanical, something desperate. An engine, she realized, a motorcycle engine, sputtering and coughing somewhere close by. Then, nothing. Silence, except for the rain. A few minutes later, there was a pounding at her door. Not a polite knock. The frantic hammering of someone who had run out of options. Betty Lou moved carefully to the door, her cane tapping the familiar path. She opened it and felt the storm rush in, cold, wet, and angry. "Please," a voice said, a man's voice, deep and rough, but with an edge of fear in it. "Please, ma'am, my hog died. I'm lost. I can't see anything in this storm. I just need to use a phone." Betty Lou could not see him, but she could hear everything. The chattering of his teeth, the heaviness of his breathing, the dripping of water onto her porch, and something else. The creak of leather. A hog rider, she thought, the heavy kind of leather that motorcycle riders wore. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. "You'll catch your death out there." The man hesitated. Maybe he was looking at her, trying to figure out why an old blind woman would open her door to a stranger in the middle of a storm. But the cold must have won, because she heard his boots cross the threshold, heard him dripping onto her floor. "Thank you," he said. His voice was quieter now, almost embarrassed. "I'm Marcus Stone. I got separated from my brothers. We were riding back from a funeral and the storm came out of nowhere." "Brothers," Betty Lou repeated, moving toward the kitchen to put on the kettle. "The kind with patches on their vests?" A long pause. "Yes, ma'am. Hell's Angels. I understand if you want me to leave." Betty Lou laughed, a dry, crackling sound. "Young man, I've been on this earth for 78 years. I stopped judging people by their clothes a long time ago. Sit down. I'll make you some tea." Marcus sat. Betty Lou could hear him shivering, hear his teeth clicking together despite the warmth of the cottage. She brought him a blanket first, one of the heavy quilts her grandmother had made, and then the tea, strong and hot with honey. "The phones are out," she told him. "Storm took the lines down an hour ago, and I don't have one of those portable things. Never saw the point, if you'll pardon the expression. Marcus let out a sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been a sob. Of course they are. I'm sorry, ma'am, I didn't mean to bother you. I can't see anything out there. I don't know where I am. I don't know which way leads back to the highway. Betty Lou sat down across from him. Her clouded eyes pointed vaguely in his direction. Well, she said, that makes two of us who can't see. But I've lived here my whole life. Marcus Stone. I know these roads better than anyone, even without eyes. What do you mean? I mean when the storm lets up a little. I'm going to walk you to the highway. It's only about 1.5 miles from here. I've walked it 1,000 times. Ma'am, I can't let you do that. You're... He stopped, clearly not wanting to say it. Blind? Betty Lou smiled. I know, dear, but I've got something you don't. I've got a map of this place burned into my memory. Every turn, every hill, every landmark. You just have to be my eyes for the things that have changed. The fallen trees, the flooded spots. We'll guide each other. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he said, voice thick with something that might have been emotion, why would you do this for me? You don't know me. You don't know what I've done. I know you're cold. Betty Lou said simply, I know you're scared, and I know you need help. That's enough for me. They waited 2 more hours for the worst of the storm to pass. During that time, Betty Lou learned that Marcus was 43 years old, that he had been riding with the Hells Angels for 20 years, that the funeral they had attended was for a brother who had died of cancer at 51. She learned that Marcus had a daughter he had not seen in 6 years, that he sent money when he could, that he thought about her every single day. In return, Betty Lou told him about her husband, gone now 15 years, about her children, scattered but loved, about the glaucoma that had stolen her sight, but not her spirit, about the loneliness that sometimes crept in during storms like this one, when the whole world seemed to have forgotten she existed. By midnight, the rain had slowed to a steady drizzle. The thunder had moved on, grumbling in the distance. Betty Lou stood and reached for her cane. Ready? She asked. Marcus stood too. She heard him zip his vest, heard the creak of that heavy leather. Ma'am, he said, Betty Lou, I don't know how to thank you. Get me to that highway in one piece, Betty Lou said. That'll be thanks enough. They walked together through the darkness. Betty Lou and the hog rider. Betty Lou led with her cane and her memory, calling out directions, describing landmarks she couldn't see, but knew were there. Marcus walked beside her, his hand gentle on her elbow, warning her of puddles and branches and the places where the road had washed out. It took them almost an hour, but they made it at the highway. Headlights appeared in the distance. Marcus flagged down a truck, and the driver agreed to take him to the nearest gas station, where he could call his brothers from the Hells Angels. Before he left, Marcus turned to Betty Lou. She couldn't see his face, but she could hear the emotion in his voice. I will never forget this, he said. Never. You saved my life tonight. Just passing on what was given to me, Betty Lou said. Now get home safe. Marcus Stone. He was gone. Betty Lou walked back to her cottage alone, guided by the same memory that had led them to the highway. She didn't think much about what she had done. It was just what you did. In her mind, you helped people who needed help, simple as that. 3 weeks later, Betty Lou woke to a sound she hadn't heard in years. Motorcycles. A lot of them. The rumble grew closer, growing louder, until it seemed to shake the walls of her little cottage in Harmony Creek. Betty Lou made her way to the front door and opened it, her heart pounding with something that might have been fear. The roar cut off, all at once, like someone had hit a switch. Then, silence. And then a voice she recognized. Betty Lou, Marcus said. I brought some friends. She heard them then. Footsteps on her porch, her walkway, her lawn, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. What's happening? She asked, her voice trembling. We're fixing your roof, Marcus said, and your gutters, and that back porch that's about to fall off. A woman from the ladies' auxiliary brought groceries, and one of the brothers is a licensed electrician, so he's gonna look at your wiring. Betty Lou's hand went to her mouth. She could not speak. You saved my life, Marcus continued, and she could hear his voice break. You walked me through that storm when you couldn't see a thing. You trusted me when you had no reason to. You treated me like a human being, when most people treat us like monsters. His hand found hers, rough and calloused, but gentle. Our family doesn't forget that, he said. You're one of us now, Betty Lou, and we take care of our own. He felt something pressed into her other hand, an envelope. This is from all of us, Marcus said. It's not much, but it'll help with the bills, and the heating, and whatever else you need. Betty Lou tried to give it back. I can't accept this, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I didn't do it for money. I just did what anyone would do. No, Marcus said firmly. No, you didn't. You did what almost no one does anymore. You saw a person in need, and you helped, even though you couldn't see, even though it was dangerous, even though you had every reason to say no. He squeezed her hand. That's rare, he said. That's precious, and we will never, ever forget it. The bikers worked all day. They replaced Betty Lou's roof, fixed her plumbing, repaired her porch. The women brought food and stayed to cook. Someone planted flowers in her garden. Someone else fixed the squeak in her front gate that had been bothering her for 10 years. By sunset, Betty Lou's little cottage looked better than it had in decades, and for the first time in 15 years, she did not feel alone. Marcus found her sitting on her new porch as the sun went down, listening to the sound of motorcycles starting up. If you ever need anything, he said. Anything at all, Chama, you know who to call. Betty Lou smiled, her clouded eyes bright with tears she could not see, but could certainly feel. Thank you, she said, for seeing me. Marcus laughed softly. You're the one who can't see, Betty Lou. But somehow, you saw me clearer than anyone has in 20 years. The motorcycles roared to life, one by one, until the evening was filled with thunder. But this time, it was not a storm, it was a promise. And before we end, we have one special request for you. Comment below with the words, kindness is vision. To show that you stand with Betty Lou, because sometimes when the people who cannot see teach us the most about truly seeing others. And if this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Because in a world that often feels dark, stories like Betty Lou's remind us that the light we give to others always finds its way back home.